18th?
You're gonna need to read number 2.
Good evening and welcome to the Charlton Board of Selectmen's meeting for February 18th, 2014. I'll ask that we begin with the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our agenda for this evening will consist of review of minutes from the Selectmen's regular meeting of February 4th. That will be followed by community relations, announcements, and open forum. We have nothing under appointments or resignations this evening, so we move on to our scheduled appointments. We have a 6:45 appointment with Fire Chief Cloutier regarding burning permit fees. We have a 7 o'clock appointment with Terry Burke-Dotzen, request for support for the Glass-Steagall Act. We have 5 items under new business, a request for a toll route from the Ribbon Rockets. Number 2 is a change of owners on a common victualer's license for Gulf Oil. Number 3 is regarding our 2014 scholarship questions. That's followed by the EDC roundtable update. And our last item under new business is a joint financial meeting with the town of Dudley and Dudley Charlton Regional School District. We have 2 items under old business, just an update on the annual town meeting to discuss the warrants and the budget, where we stand with that. And we have a presentation on the IMA legislation. We'll have followed by committee reports, a policy review. We will not have our student select person's report tonight, as she is off to Indianapolis to compete with the Shepherd Hill Fantasy Show Choir, so we wish her and them well. We will have our town administrator's report. She's not off to Indianapolis. And then we will have any other business that needs to come before the board that was unknown at the time of posting. Our next regular meeting will be held on March 4th, 2014. I would entertain a motion with regards to our minutes of February 24th.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Zafirovich?
I move we accept the minutes of February 4th, 2014.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
It was a very long.
It's a very thick pile of minutes. Yeah, it was a long meeting. Any further discussion? None appearing, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We have a couple of announcements. The Charlton Police Department is taking part in, once again, the National Drug Take-Back Initiative with the DEA to help residents and non-residents properly dispose of their expired, unused, or unwanted prescription drugs. The event is taking place on Saturday, April 26th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Charlton Police Department, 87 Masonic Home Road. It says 85. Did I say 87? Yeah. 85 Masonic Home Road. Thank you. And if you have any questions on that, you can certainly call the police department, and they can give you more information regarding that. The town clerk has stated that the nomination papers are now available for the 2014 annual town election to be held May 3rd, 2014. 48 certified signatures are required. The following seats are open. 1 selectman, seat 4, 1 selectman, seat 5, 1 town clerk, 1 town moderator, 1 assessor, 1 cemetery commissioner, 2 water and sewer commissioners, 1 planning board member, and a 2nd planning board member due to a vacancy, 1 recreation commissioner, 1 board of health member, 1 tree warden, 2 library trustees, 1 3-year seat for the Dudley Charlton Regional School Committee, 1 1-year seat for the Dudley Charlton Regional School Committee, and 1 seat for the Southern Worcester County Regional Vocational School Committee. The last day to obtain nomination papers is Thursday, March 13th until 3:30 p.m. The last day to submit nomination papers is Friday, March 14th until noon. The last day to object or withdraw is Friday, March 28th until noon. And the last day to register to vote is Monday, April 14th, 2014. And that is 9 to 8 p.m. And again, any questions, you can certainly call the town clerk's office, and they'll be glad to provide more information. Kindergarten registration at Charlton Elementary School will be held on Thursday, February 27th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And also on Friday, February 28th, from 9 a.m. till 12 p.m. and 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. Please remember to bring 3 proofs of residency, a recent physical form that includes a list of all updated immunizations, an original birth certificate, and any legal documentation if applicable. Do you have any other announcements? Do we have anyone here for open forum?
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. If you would introduce yourself, please.
Yep. Hi, I'm Karen Spiewak, and I'm here tonight wearing the hat of Spiewak Consultants. I'm here to make a very brief announcement. I wanted to let the community know that there will be a Prepared Not Scared customized personal safety workshop for senior citizens tomorrow, Wednesday, February 19th, from 1 to 2:15 p.m. at the Charlton Senior Center. And you'll have fun while learning effective strategies to avoid dangerous situations and learn fundamental skills to confront an unavoidable threatening situation. The workshop, I want to stress, is free. You just need to be a senior citizen. We might let some in if you really want to come and you're a little younger. We do ask, though, if you come, if you would bring a non-perishable item for chip-in or a small check made out to chip-in, that would be very much appreciated. And I also wanted to stress it doesn't matter what shape you're in. You can come, you'll be welcome, and you will learn something. Any
Sure.
questions? Or?
Ms. Walker?
Thank you, that sounds wonderful. Can I just ask, will it cover computer scams or anything like that?
It will not.
No.
I mean, we can, again, we can touch on that, maybe if, we can bring that up. It's more personal.
I get about one a week, that's
Yeah.
all. So
No, and I know there's a lot online. I think we actually have some information about that online, or the town does. I
Right.
think the Chief Purvey has been really good about posting things like that.
So we had, I had a resident call me a few weeks ago saying that some inspectors came to his house without a picture ID. And Robin got on it and we made sure that everybody had a picture ID that goes around, because seniors should be able to see the person's picture on an ID before they come into the house. So that kind of thing, would you be
Absolutely,
talking about?
that will be covered, yes.
Right, great. Well, that's a wonderful benefit for the seniors. Thank you.
No problem, thank you.
Mrs. Singer?
I'd just like to thank Ms. Spiewak for what she's doing. I think it's important. I think it's wonderful what you're doing. I know that this is not the first time she's done it. We were talking earlier about her doing it up at the schools. So I just think that she really deserves the thanks of everyone here in town.
It's
A good point.
my pleasure.
Grateful.
Thank you.
Stay safe, safe travels. Good night.
Good night. Mr. McGrath?
How are you?
I'm well. If you would sit and introduce yourself, please.
I will. John McGrath, Chairman of the Planning Board, also a resident. I live at 10 Ponican Hill Road. Mr. Chairman and the board, at your last meeting, there was some comments made about the Planning Board and the EDC. I take a little exception to some of the comments that were made, and this is nothing to do with persons or personalities. This is mostly facts and figures. One of the comments that was made, it was that we are not a friendly town for development. I take great affront with that. And for the simple reason that through comprehensive planning and zone changes over the past 15 years that I've been on the board, in conjunction with the EDC, we have positioned the town to attract development, okay? I think that the people that do business with the board are very happy with the way the board works and how we conduct business, okay? Any applicant is always gonna have something that they don't like that they have to do. Most of the rules and regulations that govern the planning board are either state law or zoning bylaws that have come through to fruition because of things that have happened in town or in the state. And as I say, if somebody didn't do something wrong, nobody would put a law forward to make sure that it didn't happen again. And that's how most of these laws come forward. So I'll just go over a few things that we have. We deal in facts and figures, not hearsay, rumor, and innuendo over at the planning board. List of economic development projects in the past few years. CVS, Southbridge Savings Bank, Harrington Memorial Hospital, Country Bank, Ted's, All Granite and Marble, Barkwood Inn, Masonic Home. 3 phases of Nichols Industrial Park with Phase 1 expansion just approved to add on to what Ralph's done down there already. Not counting the property that he bought on 169 that he has an approved plan to put Charlton Oil over there. 3 phases of expansion at Carl Stewart, its end division, with another one coming forward because they just ran water and sewer up there. Swadia Convenience Store down here in the Village District. Oxbow Variety Convenience Store. 3 large-scale commercial solar arrays. Creation of the Village District, also extending the Village District at the last town meeting so that Mr. LeBlanc can do something down at that end of the Village District. Honey Farms, McDonald's, and Mobile. Citgo, Dunkin' Donuts. Existing business expansions such as John's Auto and Le Mountains and many others, okay? I know that people don't know about these things. They do happen, okay? And most of it is because the planning board has tried to make sure that we are business friendly. When Representative Durant was first elected, he, Peter Cooper Sr., met with the EDC, Mr. Lally, and Mr. Gordon to learn what they were doing and how Representative Durant could help. At the end of the meeting, Representative Durant made this remark that we were the last town in his new district that he is meeting with, and that the Charlton EDC was doing more than all the other communities in his district combined for economic development. The major issue with development is not the zoning bylaws, subdivision regulation, permitting processes, board members or staff. The issue is the water supply. You will get tons and tons of small development where they don't have to have fire protection, okay? That will continue happening, and that's basically what these are, okay? Until the water supply issue is straightened out and a developer who wants to do a large-scale project, whether it be a warehouse, retail, large retail buildings, until that water supply is etched in stone, this is what you're gonna have. It's a very solid base. It's a lot of work to get where we are here. The next thing I want to say is there was a thing about why the planning board didn't go to the round table. I understand everybody's feelings on that. And the reason that we say that we feel that we have a robust process down there is the fact that every year, we come forward with zoning changes, okay? And to the subdivision bylaws and to the zoning bylaw. And the reason we do that is because after we do finish a development, whether it's large or small, we say, how can we do things better? When we did the Conover project over on Mr. Proudy's property, which didn't, because of the economic downturn, didn't take place, we found a couple of issues that we had there, and we corrected them. The first time we went to the town meeting, it didn't pass. One of the things that we wanted to do there was we wanted to extend the appeal period for abutters so that they could appeal the project. What happened was we did the wind generation over from Masonic Home. The abutters wanted to appeal it. They didn't make the appeal deadline, and they lost their right to appeal. So, we do make sure that we do review our process, okay? And we do try to use best practice with whatever we do. We're in contact with other planning boards through the planning board chat room, and the town planner has 30 years of experience doing this. I found Mr. Safarowitz went to the Chamber of Commerce meeting that Tim Murray ran, the former lieutenant governor, and I know you were very excited about that. I need to tell you this, that when Mr. Murray was the mayor of Worcester, he tried to hire Mr. Gordon back to go back as the planner for the city of Worcester. Okay, so just so you know what kind of caliber of person that you're dealing with down there as the town planner. The other thing that I heard, and I believe that these poor people have been dragged into the middle of something that I can't even figure out yet. But I'm gonna go through the TED's site plan process and explain to everybody what happens there. Ted and Tara came forward probably 2 years before they went to do their project. And they explained to us what they wanted to do. They met with the town planner, and as per our way, we kept it quiet because they weren't sure and they needed to position themselves. What we first did was we looked at the property around Ted's, saw the scope of the project that he wanted to do and what the other things were happening over there. What we decided to do was we went forward to the town meeting and we changed the whole triangle between Power Station Road, Brookfield Road, and Route 20 to community business to further allow Ted to do what he wanted to do. After that, they came in with a preliminary plan to the planning board, which is normal. We went over it, we told them what we thought, about it, and there was really no issues. So then we moved on to the submittal. So they submit their site plan, we go over it, and the one issue that came up, everything was fine with the drainage. Parking looked good. When we sent it out to the peer review for traffic engineering study, and we also, because it was also gonna impact Route 20, we sent it to Mass DOT over on Belmont Street because it's gonna impact the state road. Our traffic engineering peer review engineer sent it back, as did Mass Highway, with the recommendation to close Ted's existing driveway that came in close off of Route 20. So we and here's where I made a mistake. I'll admit that I made a mistake here. As we were discussing this, Ted and Tarek were not happy about it. So I said, all right, let's put this to the side. I said, let me discuss a couple of things with Alan and the traffic engineering people. My thought was to make it one way in coming off of 20. In hindsight, I shouldn't have done that. I should have just stuck with what the traffic engineers told us to do, okay? And from there, it went downhill fast. And, so what was happening was Ted and Tarek thought it was gonna impact their business, which as a business owner was right, but they couldn't see the engineering side of the portion. The engineers, what their problem with it was, one way in or in and out, was that it's too close to Route 20 with the size of the structure that Ted put up and the amount of parking spaces that went into it. It just would not work. What would happen is there would be an accident there, and the planning board, once we have recommendations from a traffic engineer and from the state saying that we recommend you not do that, okay, we're not gonna do it. And the reason is the town's on the hook for the liability. God forbid somebody gets seriously injured over there or killed. The first thing they come back to do is they said, how did this get approved? Where's your data on how this worked out? And there was never any arguments or screaming and yelling from the town planner side of things in the planning board office. There were, whenever he had a phone conversation with Ted and Tarek, or whenever they were in the office, he called me up because I'm basically his supervisor, as the chairman of the planning board, to tell me what went on. I think that I can understand. I consider Ted and Tarek good friends. I still do. Their feelings were bruised over this. And I think the last statement that was made in the heat of being dissatisfied with the planning board on this one item was, that they would pull out all stops to get what they wanted. And two of the board members up there were approached by Ted and Tarek to ask, you know, why, and what could they do to help them out. So was in State Senator Brewer, and probably about 50 other people that met me on the street. And I believe, once I explained everything to the people as to what was going on, I believe everybody understood it. I know Senator Brewer did, and here's where we are. So, with that, you know, the planning board is you're dealing with your friends and neighbors, and some of the decisions that you have to make are very difficult. You know, it's you know, I've lost friends over, you know, or people won't talk to me over the wind turbine over at Masonic Home. Guess what? The law's the law. I gotta, you know, we have to do what we have to do. I appreciate you giving me this time to speak, and I appreciate everything you do for us.
Mrs. Zafirovich.
Through the chair, Mr. Grath, I just want to thank you so much for coming out and explaining just your, the whole stance of the planning board and yourself, and, you know, some of the information you provided was really insightful, and I really wish that you could have been there at these meetings, because this is what we wanted you to talk about, what successes you've had, and this would have really helped further the discussion more. So,
But through the chair, I believe that twice a year, I meet with the all boards meeting and explain exactly what's going on. And this is basically just a recap of that. Not only that, at the town meeting, and I know it's very boring stuff, when I step up to the microphone, everybody wants to say, what's he doing now?
Well, plus it's the end of the night when
And,
you
yeah,
usually do
and,
that.
you know,
so.
you can't rush me out, and I'm sure everybody's saying right now, can we move this guy on? But my thing is, the zoning changes that we do at the end of the town meeting are very, very important. And that's, and if you listen to what's going on there, and pay, you know, and listen to, you know, my spiel, which, like I said, sometimes gets lengthy, as I'm sure this is, and I appreciate the time. It's, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah. We do have, one sec, we do have coming up under our new business, review of the discussion of the roundtable meeting that we did have, so I don't wanna go too far off of that into, we will have that as another discussion.
Okay.
I'll just say, I do appreciate you bringing what you brought forward. I think we all understand that what you guys do is largely dictated by law. We are gonna talk about what we get out of the roundtable, but just one chair talking to another chair. I mean, I can't speak for Finance Committee that was involved in this as well, but my goal is just to build a team approach to things, you know, because we all have the same desire in the end, which is see the town grow, get some good commercial growth in this town. And I looked at it as a tool just for, not to involve the whole town, but just couple of boards to sit down and talk it out and see.
Yep, and.
Just
and-
talk.
And through the chair, we'd love to see you come down to the planning board, absolutely. Most of the time, the reason we'd like to, you know, anybody to meet us there is, if you have any issues or questions, our data is all there, okay? This stuff is it's so intricate that you can't, you know, I can't off the cuff usually give anybody an answer or a correct answer on what happened, when it happened, until I can review it, okay? So with that, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Walker.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, thank you very much, John, for coming and explaining this. Would there be any interest in the planning board having someone come there and televise their meetings?
Sure. This has come up before, and the reason the planning board stays in the planning board office is because of the table and the plans that we use down there, and because that's where all our stuff is. Anybody wants to come down and, you know, for cable TV, that's fine. People will probably be bored out of their skulls,
Right.
but that's, you know, that it is what it is. Chairman Boria years ago brought it up, and I said, put cameras in there if you want, you know, so that's up to you guys.
Great,
We
thank
have
you
no
so much.
control over that.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Do you have anyone else here for open forum? Mr. Lally?
May I suggest if this is about the EDC that it hold, because you have a 7:45, a 6:45 and a 7, and that might be the more appropriate. just
That's a fair
suggesting.
question. Can we bring this up, Mr. Lally, during our discussion of the EDC roundtable meeting? Would that be appropriate forum for what you want to discuss?
Unless it's not EDC.
Unless it's not EDC.
What time is that happening?
We have, what we could do, we have a 6:45 appointment, we have a 7 o'clock appointment, which isn't here yet, and then we go into new business. We can take that first under new business. We could bump that up.
By all means. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You have anyone else here for open forum? Okay, then we're gonna move on to new business. We do have a 6:45 appointment. Thank you for waiting, chief. If you come up.
One of those days.
Thank you.
Thank you, chief. And the chief is here because at the last meeting, Mr. Zafirovich asked if he would come up and, to discuss the, fire burning permit fees.
Well, good evening. Thank you for having me again tonight. Seems to be the fire burning permit fees is on the agenda for the next 17 weeks for some reason, but that's okay. I'd first like to direct your attention to the data collection sheet, which is on the very last page of the packet that I just handed you. And it basically gives you some information of surrounding communities of what they do with their burning permits. I did a survey and found out a lot of good information throughout the survey. Some of the permits fees are less than Charlton's, but they also only allow them for maybe 3 days or 2 days, depending upon what community issues the burning permit. And if you notice in there, Brookfield also, their state police actually takes care of the burning permit program for them, so they have a central dispatch from the state police, so that one is also in there as well. Our permit fees, I've done the research and I'll go through that in a minute, but our permit fees of $20 is actually a little bit low, according to the data information that I will be able to present to you next.
I'm sorry, you said the permit fees are a little low?
Yes, from what I'll explain to you next is that the permit fees have not changed since 2008. They went from $5 up to $10, and then now there are $20 for the fee itself. The fire department is responsible for 45 permits under CMR 527 CMR 1, and the permits are set statutorily at $25 or by the Board of Selectmen, and they may not exceed $50 per permit. Last year, the fire department brought in $23,635 in permit fees, and just to note that the fire prevention officer's wages are $61,000 annually. Burning permits account for $8,000 last year. Over the past 3 years, we have responded on average to 52 calls for service pertaining to open air burning. Each call averaged about 3 persons responding for about 1 hour. That equates to 156 staff hours, and the staffing cost for that is $4,628.52. Anticipated reoccurring cost, 3% for the burning permit annually is $250, and the software cost is $2,000 for the one-time fee for the software to be installed and stood up, including the 3% cost. The permit also can be obtained at the town hall, and the assistant to the building commissioner takes time of her busy day to assist us in issuing permits. As of right now, that time is approximately half an hour a day. We are in a slow period of time because of the heavy snow that we have out there. It's very difficult to get to brush piles. During that time, there's 109 days that burning is potentially allowed. The assistant building commissioner works 75 of those days, so the cost is $716 for the assistant to the building commissioner's rate. The permission to activate your burning permit must be turned on daily. The chief turns on burning permits or makes the determination that burning is or is not allowed according to the DEP regulations and fire danger. He also reviews permits for accuracy and payment information daily. At noon, he also emails and prints out the active permits for that day and sends them to the officer in charge. This process takes approximately an hour a day at 106 days at a cost of $3,200. The tax collector's office also works with the burning permit program, and they check permits for back taxes. The payments are reconciled under the Unipay program and turned over daily. The cost for that process is $2,100 and change. We also took a look at the vehicle costs, the 52 calls that we received annually. We usually have 1 to 3 vehicles on scene. The cost for one vehicle is $31.66 per hour. The cost for the department for these calls is $1,646. After you take up all these total costs and we add them all together, and it comes up to a total of $14,841. If we divide that over 400 permits that we issued last year, the cost of the permit should actually be $37.10 rather than $20. I'd also like to talk about the environmental impact that burning does to our community. Burning brush also has an environmental impact to our community, and according to the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, asthma rates in Massachusetts are the highest in the United States. Smoke is made up of a complex mixture of gases and fine particles produced when wood and other organic matter burn. The biggest health threat that smoke comes from the fine particles. These microscopic particles can get in your eyes and respiratory system, where they can cause health problems such as burning eyes, running nose, and illnesses such as bronchitis. Fine particles also can aggravate chronic heart and lung diseases. I would like to consider folks to actually compost their brush rather than burn it. Organic materials is great in gardens and is much better for the environment itself. I know that I pay about $18 a yard for organic material and compost like that for my own garden. So here's an opportunity for you also to save some money and work that way. Also, fire itself is inherently dangerous. We must also remember that this permit is to build a fire, which in itself is in a dangerous situation if not controlled properly. Please adhere to the following when using your open-air burning permit. The permit fire cannot cause a nuisance. The permit must be at least 75 feet away from a structure, and the permit must be attended at all times. I've also included our permit fee chart in your packet as well. The permit fee chart is also posted in the annual permit booklet that is out in the hallway that anyone can pick up. So at this time right now, I would recommend that we stay at the $20 for the open air burning permit. It does equate to about 19 cents a day if we use it for the 109 days. And also, by looking at the numbers that we have and figuring out the dollar figure, I think it's a bargain for what we're getting, honestly. So that's my report.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Zafirovich?
Through the chair, Chief, I just want to thank you for this incredibly comprehensive yet brief report. I think is very well done, and you really laid out every aspect of it, and this is exactly what I think we were looking for. And I just appreciate your effort with this.
Okay, you're welcome.
Ms.
I
Walker?
try to make sure that it's thorough enough so you understand, but not have too much information as well, so.
Thank you, Chief. For some reason, I had the figure of 600 permits a year in my mind.
Yep.
But it's 300 and something here.
As time has gone on, actually, these are from the numbers from the 2013, 2013 end-of-year report. So this is where the numbers come from. That's what I figured I'd use. The 600 permits that we ended up having in the past, we've had years that are much higher than that as well. So that, speaking off the top of my head, a couple of weeks ago, 600 seems to be the number, but actually it's a little bit down from that, about 400.
I'm not finished.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chief. I was actually quite satisfied with Mr. Meskis's explanation last week, and I had previous questions, but he answered them, so I was really surprised. I'm sorry that you got dragged through all this. This is a tremendous amount of work, and I I certainly, for one, didn't intend for you to have to go to all this trouble. I was happy last week.
That's okay, and honestly, it's given, I think, the fire department another justification piece to say, this is what we're doing, this is why we do it, and this is how we get there. I think it was a great thing to go through, to be able to justify all of that, and be able to break down what our actual vehicle cost was something I've been wanting to do, but it actually forced me into doing it. So I found it very, actually rewarding to be able to put this whole thing together and present it. I was actually excited to come tonight, which I usually am, but able to give you guys the information that is necessary, and so you can make a good decision. So when folks ask you, you have the right answers, or the answers that can justify it.
Mrs. Safarovich?
I just want to thank you again that a lot of this information, you know, as selectmen, we don't really know the fine details, and just the way you compile it, the way you present it to us really helps us understand the whole process. Just one quick question.
Yep.
The $14,000 you cited for the total cost that you've researched,
Correct.
will that number decrease with the online permitting?
It will decrease next year. There's the $2,000 cost in it this year because of the actual fee. But if you take that $2,000 off and you break that down over the 400 permits, it still comes up to about $33 a permit. So I would not recommend changing it. I think that $20 is a very reasonable request to ask for folks. For what they actually get is more than that $20 worth.
Do you have any other questions for the chief? No? Thank you, Chief. I do have one question on an unrelated matter, if I could, and if you'd indulge me.
Is it on the agenda? Oh, sorry, I just couldn't.
Seeing as the chair sets the agenda, I'll say yes. Chief, I saw an email a week or so ago that our 3 primary engines were all out of service at the same time, which is a little disturbing. I just wondered if you'd mind giving us an update as to where we are with that.
Well, thankfully, for a lot of reasons, the way the fire department works is, I'm very thankful for that. We were able to call Spencer Fire Department and actually beat Spencer. They beat us to the punch. We also called Webster and Dudley to request them to borrow an engine. And Spencer called us back first, so guess who Spencer drove into town? The greatest thing is that we were able to utilize their engine. It just went back to Spencer yesterday. I'm happy to say that 2 of our 3 lead engines are back in service. Engine 3 was a windshield wiper pump, had broken, and in this kind of weather, you cannot drive without windshield wipers. So the windshield wiper motor broke. That truck is a 1996, and that truck the company's out of business. You cannot get parts for it anymore. We had to locate a part out of someplace down in Arkansas. It was sent up, and it got to us last week. We were able to get that put back into service and get it back get the truck back. Engine 1 had a fire last week. It ended up blowing one of the pipes in the pump housing area, and the pipe broke through. We just had those pumps certified and tested a couple of months ago, and so it's just happened to be one of those things. It just happened to break when it broke, and of course when the other 2 trucks are out of service. Engine 2 is a little bit more of a problem. Engine 2 just went through an extensive repair, about $5,000 to the engine. It had a problem with the diesel fuel pump. It has been back in service since then for about 2 months, and there's something wrong with that pump, and we have diesel fuel pouring out of the bar of the engine. So that's back at one of our local dealers. They're working on that. I don't expect that truck back for probably another couple of weeks. But right now we do have 2 of our 3 lead apparatus in service. They do say Charlton on the door, which is another good thing. But our apparatus is getting old. It's getting to be that point where we need to start thinking about replacing that apparatus and getting some new apparatus out there. So I appreciate your request for information and giving us that opportunity to talk about it for a couple of minutes. So I appreciate it.
I did see an incident on Route 20 in Charlton where there was a Spencer fire truck
Yep.
responding.
That's the great thing about mutual aid. We're able
Yeah.
to borrow other folks' equipment. You've seen Charlton ambulances in Auburn before because they've had problems with ambulances. And when you have a good working relationship with other communities, I think it's very vital to be able to have that, because everybody's willing to help out and try to get the job done, because that's our ultimate goal anyway.
Perfect. Thank you, Chief. Any other,
Thank you.
Mr. Singer?
Just, I know we have the mutual aid agreement, so that's in place anyway, but I'd still like to see our board, if everyone agrees, send a letter of thanks to the Spencer Fire Department, signed by everybody.
Good idea.
Would you, Ms. Craver, if you'd be willing to draft that for us? Thank you, Mr. Singer. Any
Thank
other
you very
questions
much.
for
I
the chief?
appreciate that. That'll mean a lot.
Very good. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chief. Running a little bit late, we do have a 7 o'clock appointment to discuss the Glass-Steagall Act. Ms. Craver? No, we don't. I will ask you to sit down and introduce yourself, if you would.
Yes, sir. Please find attached a letter from the Relay, not that one. Let me go back. Here we go. We've received a request from Terry Burke Dotson asking to speak to the board about sending a letter of support for Glass-Steagall. I had also sent you an email from Terry, which had 2 videos that you were asked to watch before this meeting. And she's here.
Again, if you would introduce yourself, please.
Yes, speaking. Yes, my name is Terry Burke Dotson, and I'm from Millbury, Massachusetts, and I'm also a candidate for state representative for Charlton, Oxford, Auburn, and Millbury. I'm here tonight to, there is presently a resolution at the State House, and there will be a public hearing on it next week. And I was coming here with the hope that if you had an opportunity to review the information that I sent to you, that you might be willing to send a letter of support that we could bring to the State House with us. I'm going to give you some background information. Glass-Steagall was one of the tools that Franklin Delano Roosevelt used to get us out of the Great Depression. It separated and it regulated the financial services of commercial banks from investment banks. In commercial banks, they earned money by lending the depositors money, and they were protected they extended credit, and they were protected by the FDIC. Through this lending of credit, we got things like the TVA. It built things and it created jobs. Now, at the same time, investment banks used the depositors' money to gamble with and take risks. And that's where most of us put our retirement money, hoping that we'll make a big killing before we have to retire. But those investment banks, if they lost money, they were required to resolve it on their own. The FDIC was not obligated, nor did they want to bail out investment banks. However, in 1999, Glass-Steagall was repealed by Congress when President Clinton was being impeached. And as soon as they got that passed, and as soon as they got NAFTA passed, the impeachment proceedings ceased. However, when the regulations of Glass-Steagall were removed, both commercial banks and investment banks started gambling. And the gambling just really got out of control, and we saw how devastating that was in 2000 and 2008 when the banks almost failed. In 2010, and since 2008, when President Obama came in, we have spent over $5 trillion in bailing out these too-big-to-fail banks. Wall Street, too-big-to-fail banks, Bank of England, all mean the same thing. They're all headquartered in London, England. They all mean the same thing. So if I say Wall Street, I'm really saying big banks and Bank of England. For that $5 trillion, we got nothing. Nothing was built. No TVA, we got nothing for it, and no jobs were created. Then, in 2010, a bigger disaster happened. July 21st, 2010, President Obama signed into law the Dodd-Frank Act. And regrettably, just like Obamacare, this law at that time was over 800 pages long. Our legislators didn't want to read it. It was just too massive. And Wall Street spent over $29.5 million in lobbyists. That's almost five lobbyists per legislator down there in D.C. to convince them that Dodd-Frank was only a modification of Glass-Steagall and good for the country. What the legislators didn't know, and even though they do know now, under Title II of that Dodd-Frank Act, the FDIC has been given authority to seize depositors' money to pay off creditors. And in December 10th, 2012, our FDIC signed an agreement with the Bank of England, assuring the Bank of England that if they had to take over a bank, that they would get paid off. Now, what they would do is a bail-in. And what a bail-in means is that the depositors in the bank now become the owners of the bank, and they are given shares in the bank instead of their money. This is legal.
Excuse me, ma'am, I'm gonna ask you one second.
Yes.
What we have down is ask and support for Glass-Steagall, so if we could keep your comments centered on that exact issue.
All right. I'm trying to.
No, I
Yeah,
appreciate the
okay.
I appreciate the background.
All right. Now, this is a very serious situation. Glass-Steagall would stop these bail-ins and bail-outs. And there are two bills in the House in Washington, D.C., and two bills in the House and the Senate. And the reason why we have brought a resolution forward to the State House in Massachusetts is that every citizen has a voice. You have to understand that under Dodd-Frank, the FDIC now protects big banks, Wall Street and the Bank of England, legally. Under Glass-Steagall, the FDIC would return to protecting depositors. And that's why with Massachusetts there are 3 legislators that we have in D.C. that have not signed on to Glass-Steagall. That would be Neil, Kennedy, and Keating. However, a resolution coming from the state of Massachusetts is very powerful in affecting the other legislators in Washington, D.C. Therefore, I ask you, after reviewing this information, to please join us in sending a letter of support to our legislators on the Hill. The hearing will be next week, next Wednesday, and if any of you want to come with us, I'd be happy to go with you. We're going to have the public hearing there, and then it goes through a series of steps before it's passed as a resolution. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Singer?
It's not really a question, just my comments on the request. I had 2 reasons not to support. I have a third now after our presentation. When I got the email, I wanted to try and do my homework and find out as much as I could about this, wrap my arms around it. Fortunately, I know a lot of people in the House and the Senate, and both Republicans and Democrats, and said, give me some information, tell me about this. 2 reasons that I'm initially, and not the third, why I don't want to see the town of Charlton support this. First, what I got back, I'm not sure what's going to happen. They sent me a lot of emails that you had sent in information, is that I was told, I don't know what will happen in Boston, but I was told that it's a federal issue, so that our legislators in Boston have absolutely no authority whatsoever in regard to this. My second issue, which just came up tonight, was you identified yourself as a candidate for state rep.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be a dangerous precedent for the Board of Selectmen to support the legislative agenda of a candidate for state rep during an election. be a bad precedent for this board to set. My third reason, which I just personally find troubling, were emails that you send to every, I think, legislator in Boston, including Mr. Mayo, where we're referencing our president, and I'm not his supporter, and our government with comparisons to the Nazis and Adolf Hitler, Glass-Steagall or die, or America will die, Glass-Steagall or mass genocide. One of them referenced, to paraphrase, I think it was thermonuclear war, potentially as early as March or February. And if you've also associated yourself with this LaRouche pack, who I went to look up and found pictures of Obama with Hitler mustaches, I just think regardless, I think that these are things that have happened, messages that have been sent that you've associated yourself with that I think would be detrimental for this board and town to associate itself with. Two, as I said, it's a federal issue. And three, my other issue was, I don't think this board should be supporting the legislative agenda of a political candidate during an election.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions?
I would like to hear her response to some of Mr.
I began working for the passage of Glass-Steagall far earlier than making my decision to become a candidate. And it was the lack of understanding that caused me to run as a candidate. I did allow people to use my, I had a list of all of the people and I allowed them to use my list, okay, for that thermonuclear war, which I understand, but that takes a lot more information to get to you. I didn't mean to offend anybody by coming here as a candidate. That was the only fair thing I thought I could say. But my interest is, although it's going to be voted on in Washington, D.C., you can't think of it only as a federal issue. If you have a savings account, if you have a retirement account, this affects you as it affects me. And every person's voice counts here in every town, every phone call that we make to Congress. And coming through the process, we as citizens can, number one, call our own congressman, but we can also approach the state to say, please, send a message to Congress for us. That's the democratic process, and we all have a voice.
Yes, Mr. Chair, or through the chair.
Yes.
I mean, I agree we all have a voice, and I think people who know me will tell you I'm the last person who's a supporter of Mr. Obama. But we all have a voice. We all have savings accounts. We all have the right to reach out to our legislators in Boston in support of issues. We also all have the right to not.
Yes.
And for me, I've given you my three reasons. One, I personally found the references to thermonuclear war, our president and our government, comparisons to the Nazis and Adolf Hitler, which I saw the emails to every legislator in Boston from you. I thought that was offensive. I thought it was overreaching, and I think that there are better ways to drive your message without going quite that far.
Do you want me to address that?
No, I don't need you to address
Okay.
that, because I have two other issues. One, federal. So our state legislators have no authority whatsoever. Sure, I think that whether we ask them to or not, since you've repeatedly emailed virtually everyone in the House or every legislator in Boston, they understand, I hope they understand this issue, since they basically told me that. Their decisions are going to be made whether we send them a letter or not. And regardless of the references to Hitler, Nazis, and thermonuclear war, and federal or state issues, there's the one issue, which now to me also just came up tonight when you said you were running for state rep, was that this board should not be sitting here as a board and supporting legislation for a candidate running for office during your election. Now, that's really all I have to say on this issue.
Thank you. Ms. Walker and Mr. Zafirovich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, according to the research that I did, Glass-Steagall is a very important measure that really needs to get supported. And from what I read, I would support it myself personally. I have in the past been against this board sending blanket letters out to legislatures in other towns. Even one supported by Mr. Singer, I believe. But, so I'm generally not interested in doing that kind of letter writing unless it's something that's overwhelmingly important, and there's a consensus among the whole board that we should send the letter. Letters have been sent out where there wasn't a consensus, where 3 members wanted it and 2 didn't, and it comes from the whole board, and it's kind of embarrassing if you were against it. So if there was a unanimous agreement on this board to send a letter, I'd probably go along with that. I'm sorry, I just need to finish, sorry. And, I know I'm talking too long, but, the other issue that Mr. Singer brings up about, appearing to support a candidate is problematic for me also. So, that's, something that, it's a little bit disturbing, but Glass-Steagall, it seems to me like an important thing, other than
Mr. Chair.
all that.
1 second, Mr. Safarovich?
Ms. Walker, I didn't mean to interrupt, I was just playing with my pen. But I just want to echo what you said, because I agree with that. I think the responsibility of this board should not go to such a personal level that I will not debate the merits of the Glass-Steagall Act. I think a lot of the information you presented is actually is very important, and I think it does have some merits. But I think this might, as a board supporting these kind of federal issues, would set a dangerous precedent. You know, we would probably, people come to us to ask us to support Obamacare or other comprehensive federal reforms. I don't think that's really what our job is. You know, I think we send letters of support to really support issues that affect the way we run our town, just as asking the governor to release Chapter 90 monies or increase local aid and those kind of things. So those kind of letters I think are more appropriate than something, as was repeated earlier, a federal issue.
I was just gonna point out, Mr. Chair, one thing that Ms. Walker had stated, which I agree with completely. Regardless of the action tonight, you know, everyone has the right to individually do as they please and support what they please and contact who they please in support of whatever issues they please.
Thank you. I do think that just, for myself, I do think Glass-Steagall is an important thing that we as taxpayers need to educate ourselves on and address on our own. And so I appreciate you getting everyone talking about it a little bit and bringing it to us.
That makes me really happy. That does make me happy. And Mr. Singer, you have my telephone number. If you ever want to talk about thermonuclear war, I can talk to you. I only came for Glass-Steagall tonight. All right? And federal issue, but we're all citizens.
No question.
We're all citizens, and we all have a voice.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
coming before us
Thank
tonight.
you.
Have a good night. We are going to move on to new business, and if there are no objections from the board, as Mr. Lally has been patiently waiting, we'll bring our EDC roundtable update up next.
Chair?
Ms. Walker?
Sorry.
Then Mr. Singer. Ms. Walker, then Mr. Singer.
I just wanted to bring up a point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
At the last meeting, Mrs. Kramer encouraged me to point out that Mr. Lally was my husband, and I did. And then Mrs. Cloutier, a resident, stood up and said that I really shouldn't be involved and should recuse myself from any discussions involved in the EDC. And so I called state ethics, and I have an email from them. And basically, state ethics asked me if my husband received any compensation from the town, and I told them he did not, and they said, did he receive any kind of benefits, like health care or anything like that? And I said he did not. And she said, well, from that end of it, then you shouldn't have to, you should be able to include yourself in any discussions. She said, but there's a second point rather, and she said, and that's, can you be objective? Do you feel you can be objective in talking about the EDC? And I told her, and I'll tell you, that I certainly feel like I can be objective in talking about the EDC. If, however, the subject were specifically my husband and his role in something to do with Mike Lally personally on the EDC, then I would not participate in the discussion because I could not be objective. So, with that, she suggested that I file a disclosure of appearance of conflict of interest with the town clerk, which I have written up here in front of me, and I will file that. But I just wanted to mention that to everybody, and in the future, when issues with the EDC come up, not Mike Lally, and Mike Lally's here, I think, to talk about the EDC in general, I will point out that, that my relationship with him.
Thank you for
Sure.
clearing that up. And I asked this to be on here, as everyone knows, appears to know by now, we did have a meeting last Tuesday night, our off night, regarding what we called an economic roundtable, which was to just look at trying to open lines of communication and look at the process in town when large construction projects do come in, and just to toss around some ideas on that. I thought it was very productive. We got 5 or 6 good points out of it that, we're gonna try to work again with EDC and with the planning board and get some information, and we do have a few issues that we're gonna look into. It just happened last week, so we're still, I know myself, between the snowstorms and everything else, I'm still getting my notes put together, but we're gonna go forward on that. And it was generally agreed that the overall sentiment of the night was that it was a good start, to have some good discussion. We do have some points that we can look into, and the hope is to have at least, or to have ongoing meetings, or at least another meeting to see where we go from there, and to see how things develop, and if we can look at some of these issues, and hopefully have input from planning board and EDC as we go forward on that. And Mr. Lally, I know you want to speak on behalf of EDC, so if you would introduce yourself, the floor is yours.
I'm Mike Lally. I've 96D Baker Pond Road, last time I checked, through the snow. And I've been on the EDC for about 14 years. I was chair for 6 years. And it's been a privilege to have worked with John McGrath and Alan Gordon throughout that whole time, establishing for this community rules, bylaws that help the community build and develop. There was very little when we started. Now, I watched the tapes, I listened to the comments, and I have to say, Mr. Chairman, that I accept your thoughts, and I accept you as a gentleman, and I will proceed from there. I will, to start with, read you what we present at the all boards meeting twice a year, our update of the EDC. And since there have been allegations and that we do little in the community, that we're not a good representative, this has just been an ongoing situation. Now, this report has been done twice a year. I've been the point person to read it out for a number of years. And I've seen very few members from this board at that meeting. So hopefully this will clarify what the EDC has been doing. This was the update of the General Board meeting on 10/8/13. The EDC continues to work in partnership with the Planning Board and with staffing from the Town Planner on our economic development planning efforts. The EDC continues to utilise its Economic Development Action Plan to guide its efforts in 5 focus areas: business enterprise zone planning, community marketing efforts, public and private economic development partnerships, regional economic development collaborations, intergovernmental assistance. In partnership with the Planning Board, we continue to work on implementing the recommendations of the Charlton Master Plan. Our recent efforts include updating at the last May town meeting a zoning map of the district along the Route 20 corridor to allow for proposed economic development to enter into planning board permitting process. A second zoning map revision that we supported at the May town meeting extended the village district zone south of the town hall to allow further small-scale village-style mixed development. We partnered with the planning board at the May town meeting to update the signage section of the zoning bylaws in order to meet both applicants' needs and our planning needs. And we are supporting the planning board on 2 minor revisions to sign section of the town meeting. We continue to conduct our economic development marketing efforts at the regional and the local level. We operated our booth again last Wednesday at the Mass Business Expo at the Worcester Centrum. We had a good turnout of visitors to the booth, including developers interested in the Route 20 corridor and many Charlton residents who attend the expo and learn details from us regarding ongoing economic development planning efforts. We also have been working lately with the Mass staff of the Office of Business Development on connecting MOBD with the Route 20 Charlton Economic Development projects for potential MOBD funding assistance to those new developments and existing site expansions. Economic development activity has continued to increase along the Route 20 corridor. Like the Planning Board, we continue to meet with the proponents of many projects proposing office use, retail business, and warehouse-related projects being designed and scheduled for upcoming planning permitting applications. We've actively reviewed the Planning Board current economic development plans, including commercial, solar projects, warehousing, medium-scale office business complexes, a proposed large-scale multi-recreational facility in the town, and several upcoming business site expansions. I will digress here for a second and let you know that we work under a prohibition. We are sworn to secrecy. We are not allowed to divulge many of the things that are happening, just to give a fair chance for all potential developers. And so if there are things happening that you don't know about and they may show up later, the reason why you haven't heard up to now is because we are under that restriction. The EDC also represents Charlton in the Regional Economic Development Programme within the South Central Chamber of Commerce. Both the EDC member Alicia Dijek and town planner continue to be part of the effort, meeting quarterly with the Chamber Director and representative of the towns in the Chamber region to address economic development issues of mutual concern. We are an active partner right now in the Chamber's state grant-funded South County Regional Economic Development Marketing effort, which includes developing outreach information to both companies and the area's educational institutions alike. We provided the Chamber with economic development site availability information for inclusion on the marketing project's webpage. We're also actively distributing the recently updated Charlton Permitting Guidebook, which is available both on the town webpage and in print copies at the town clerk, building commissioner, planning board, and assessor's offices. Finally, in partnership with the planning board, we're working on the Route 20 redesign project that the Mass DOT began this year, and will continue to be involved as the process moves forward into the 25% design stage in the next few years. Jeannie Armstrong, a planning consultant from the Land Use Incorporated in Northampton, worked with us for 2 years on the Route 20 corridor, along which we introduced the BEP into the business enterprise zoning. Now, that was done after 2 years of really tough negotiation to get it right, so that when people come into town and want to develop, they know that the plot next to them will have to adhere to a predetermined standard, which is very important for businesses going forward. So our planning is not just immediate, it's long range as well, and that is a very vital factor for the development. Now, not all local developers were enamored with this new BEP, because it creates that comfort zone for other potential competitors, but it's also a long-range plan for the whole interest of the town, all developers, new developers, or whatever comes down the pike. No pun intended there. Despite contentious moments, we do try to be business-friendly and have created a very helpful tool to guide and help the newcomers in that business guidebook. It took us a year to put that together, and we've incorporated every possible avenue that anybody coming into town can follow. It helps them in their direction, and they're not muddling around trying to find out where the offices are or who they have to contact. Now, It's comforting after 20 years that my cover is blown. Finally, there's been rumor that I've been married to Kathleen Walker. So since that's cleared up.
Well, it's a small town.
It's a
Those
small
rumors
town,
spread
so,
like
yeah.
wildfire.
Now, since we've been involved, I guess I have to take umbrage with some of the comments that have been made, Joe, about us, and I will discuss those later. But nobody took umbrage when Kathleen Walker and myself initiated the first auction for the library, when we initiated and started and saw to conclusion Hazardous Waste Day, when we spent 2 years preparing, with the help of Linda Davis, recycling. And I remember being admonished and shut off in my presentation at the town meeting by the town moderator at the time. And after 2 years of work, I wasn't enamored with that either. Kathleen and I have worked together on the Old Home Day. We've worked together on Fay Mountain Farm when Joel Lerner and I were setting up the golf game while the negotiations were going on. When we worked together with Mark Baldy in Worcester, when we went there after ExxonMobil for compensation to remediate the oil spills and the damage in town. No one complained when we worked to acquire the Arts Activity Centre. So this new development is somewhat disconcerting, but I learned to live with it. Now, going off the record just a little bit here. Dan Proudy, who is one of the established gentlemen in this town, who is a major developer, I worked with him pro bono some years ago for some months. I wanted to see what was involved in economic development. I took it seriously. I wanted to help the town. And I had been 20 years a director of a civil engineering outfit. So seeing that Dan was a prominent developer, I wanted to see how he operated. Well, he's a first-class developer. Only trouble was that all his major developments were outside of the town of Charlton. And they were beautiful developments. So it was very disconcerting to see all that business bypassing Charlton. So I looked at it, I saw immediately where the problem was. We didn't have the water or the sewer. We didn't have infrastructure. So rather than pussyfooting around, I went to work and joined, and with Kathleen again, in the Water Search Committee. Now, we went to Spencer, we went to Auburn, and finally in Southbridge, we discovered an ample source of water. And because there had been an acrimonious relationship between the town of Charlton and Southbridge for many, many years earlier on, we worked very diligently to breach that gap. And at the meetings of the MMA, we would meet these people, first casually, then more formally, and after a while, we were friends. So it was a very natural avenue to go. They had the resource, we had the money, so it was only a matter of time until we should have concluded and sealed up that deal. Now, our good friend, Mr. Clark, and I met one weekend in Boston during the MMA, and it was at the early start, and I introduced myself. Oh, he said, yeah, I know you. He said, you're the one that helped me at the driving range last year. So I do a bit of teaching, and it was a very nice thing to happen because I thought, well, this furthers our plan, and we can move forward. Now, I don't want to go into too much. I know Ted and Derek very well. I'm friends with them. I go shop in their new store, which is a beautiful compliment to Charlton, apart from all the other developments that are going on. It's unfortunate if there's been acrimony because, and it's a major project, so there's bound to be some disagreement. And John, I think, did a good job of explaining that. I'm afraid, Mr. Zarovich, that we have to stop them from muddling around and doing nothing. The town has not done anything to address the economic development. These are taken from the script that I looked through. This is disconcerting. It's an affront to all the volunteerism that goes on in this town. We have a great many boards of very dedicated, hard-working people. And to say that we're just muddling around in Charlton, I think you owe an apology to the public of Charlton, and to me, and to anybody else that's been involved with EDC or planning. So that's my comment there. Now, further along, Ms. Graver and Mr. Lemansky, we passed the baton to them to get the water deal signed up. And unfortunately, that broke down at the end of last year in an acrimonious relationship between Mr. Clark and primarily Ms. Graver that he mentioned to me when I was talking to him. So it has stopped. Now we have an interim of 6 months with an interim town manager coming into Southbridge, which I'm sure will not bring to fruition a completed deal. So we'll have to wait another year. While we're waiting for these things to be concluded and getting the job done, which should have been finalized by now, opportunities for this community are passing by. And it is very frustrating and very sad to see all this potential development sitting there, bypassing us, when all we need is to get the infrastructure in place. So that's roughly where I'm coming from. That's who I am. Thank you.
Thank
If you
you.
have any questions, I'm good.
Mrs. Afrovich?
Through the chair, I think it goes out saying of how much stuff you've done for this community and how much we appreciate both you and your secret wife, apparently, have done for this town. It doesn't really get much more Charlton than Mr. Lally and Ms. Walker.
Thank you.
I don't think we've ever admonished you for doing these things. There's the numerous activities you've done for this town, and I think you two are staples of this town. My comments about the whole muddling around was not aimed at any one specific board or any one specific person. The reason why I'm strong about this is there is a stigma of Charlton around that I've heard from so many different people that it's not a good place to do business. That's where I was coming from with that statement. Now, I really appreciate you coming here and giving us updates like Mr. McGrath did of telling us what you've done and addressing some issues. That's exactly what we were going for when we were organizing this roundtable discussion. So it seems as though you did not want to come to that discussion, but you came to this one without much hesitance. But just to address some of the updates at the all boards meetings, those meetings are very important to really get everyone on the same page, and it really helps us understand what's going on with the different departments. Sadly, I believe that it's not really a good place to have a proper discussion. Updates are good, but there's a lack of focus, and that's why we had these kinds of meetings, because we want you to come in. We appreciate what you do. We want to know what you do, how you do it, and it's not just about all the bad things. We want to hear the good things. We want to use your expertise and go forward, and that's why we've been holding these kinds of meetings. And I think one thing maybe we should do is our next meeting, or maybe one of the upcoming ones, maybe we should meet, on your turf, maybe during one of your planning board EDC meetings.
Through the chair to Joe.
Mr. McGrath.
That's fine. The board is invited anytime, and any member of the board can come down to the planning board, and you don't have to be on the agenda, okay? We have an open forum basically at the end of the meeting where we really do chew the fat. But I think, Joe, the problem with like one of the comments that you just made is that you've been hearing, these discontented people about how we're not friendly for development and that there's problems with the process. I'm just reading in a little into what you said. The problem is we don't deal with rumors, hearsay, and innuendo, okay? I always hear people saying, this and that, and when you ask them who, okay, and I'm not gonna ask anybody in a public forum who has issues, okay? You can never get to the bottom of it. I call that sniping, okay? When somebody stands out in the trees and they just fire bullets, okay? I think anytime you wanna come and tell me who is complaining about the planning board or the process, we can sit down with them, and we can discuss it. Now, I know two people, okay, who complain. And I'm gonna just give you a generalization of several times this gentleman has complained to me, and he's a large landowner, and he's a large developer, and he complains. And when you ask them what's wrong, well, this. And then it's, well, if you want, come in and sit down with the planning board and we'll talk about it, okay? You know, whatever you wanna do, never shows up, okay? I'll say 4 weeks ago, in the town hall, in the hallway, he ran into the town planner, has this possibility for a parcel of land that he owns, but the zoning's not correct. So he mentions it to Alan. Alan says, come on in. We'll do whatever we have to do to help you out. Haven't seen him, okay? So that's the type of thing I'm saying. Anytime you have anybody that's dissatisfied with what we do, and this goes for the whole board, okay? You know, and we're all about improving our process and helping developers, come down. I will not, and Alan Gordon will not, you know, beat anybody up for saying that they don't like what we're doing, okay? So, you know, I think that's the fair way to handle some of these issues.
Thank you. I just want to be very clear on one thing, that the purpose of the roundtable, as we've talked about a little bit, was not to be a meeting for people to vent their frustrations and for it to be any personal attack on anybody, that type of thing. In my mind, again, it was a case of where we had a large project, fairly large project by Charlton standards that was completed. And my hope was to get all involved parties together and sit down, and like you said earlier, John, okay, we just went through this. What can we learn from this? What can we do to make this better? I do think it's important that, and another reason in doing this, I do think it's very important for any developer that comes to town, if it's local, if it's someone out of town, if it's just a resident in this town, that they see the planning board, the EDC, the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, the town administrator, the licensing bureaus, all working together, because we all have that same goal. We want good, quality business coming to our town. And that was the purpose in that, just to try to keep, and Mike, I appreciate the updates. And I don't make all boards and committees meetings, I make as many of them as I can make. But I think I'd like to see more in the interest of just regular communication, as opposed to twice a year, or you know. So that was the meaning behind all of this, was just trying to, let's talk more, let's keep communications open, let's work together, and let's try to move forward.
It was admirable, okay? The problem, I guess, is that, and call me pragmatic, call me whatever you want, but that's, you know, for whatever reason, that's not what I had in my mind. Probably I was wrong, okay? But what I will say is, whether you or the town administrator called me or Jay Detterando or the EDC or Alan Gordon, explained what this was gonna be, what the purpose of this was gonna be. Because from the discussion that I've heard last meeting, and, you know, we haven't hit the rest of the meat of this issue, I guess, tonight, but that is not what it seemed to be, or what it seems to be, because what I'm hearing is, and don't anybody take affront at this, what I see this as is an attack on the town planner, okay? I'm just gonna say that, okay? We're gonna get that right out here, right now, up front. And I've managed large groups of people over my 30 years in manufacturing. I've dealt with Ford, Chrysler, and General Motors. I've gone to many schools, many management schools. And the gentleman that's the town planner, who's been with us for 15 years, is a very, very professional person. He does not lose his cool. He does not scream and yell at people, okay? I've seen him in heated exchanges with lawyers. And I believe, Rick, you were there when the Connell lawyer was badgering the heck out of him, and Alan did not lose his cool. And if he's gonna lose his cool with anybody, it was gonna be with Mark Donahue, who was representing Connell at the time.
Well, I think, I appreciate what you say, John, and I think that just goes back to the point of, if we can keep regular communication,
Okay.
we won't need to get to that
And-
point.
and-
It was not an, one second, I'll get to Mrs. Singh. It was not an attack on the town planner, it was not an attack on anyone. It was meant to be, as I stated, nothing more. than a chance to sit down and say, okay, what can we do? And the Morskowskis were invited, they didn't ask to attend, they were invited, because having just completed a project, they might have some insight as through their experiences that we may be able to learn something. It was nothing more than that.
And as I said before, anybody's welcome to come down and talk to us. And Joe, like I said, if you have people that are complaining, you know, don't you take the heat for it. Tell them to come down and talk to us, or pass their name on to me, or pass their name on to Alan or any other board member, and we'll talk to them.
Mrs. Singer?
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you, and since Mr. McGrath is here, I'll address his points from earlier as well. When I was sitting here listening to Mr. Lally, I actually made an entire list of notes to get back to you on a lot of things that you said. I have since, however, decided not to address any of these. There's a time and a place, and I'll suffice it to say, everyone has an opinion. Everyone does. I have mine, you have yours, Mr. Seferovich, Ms. Walker, Mr. Swenson, we all do, Mr. McGrath. It doesn't mean we have to agree with each other's opinions. Mr. McGrath mentioned sniping. I think he knows that, like him, I don't snipe.
Correct.
If I'm involved in something, if I'm behind something, my name's front and center. I'm not gonna hide. It's right out. And if I have an issue with a person, they're gonna know it. I'm happy that Mr. McGrath came up tonight, and I got a lot out of what he said. Yeah, sure, I would've loved to have heard that night. I'm glad I got to hear it. It helps me understand the process better, so I'm thankful. Other than that, really, I just have to go back to, thank you. That was very enlightening. The rest of it, I'm not gonna get into tit for tat.
And I think, just to clarify something, I'm not saying that this board is sniping. I'm saying that we have people out in, when you hear the comment that, I hear out, out in the public and this and that, that doesn't carry any water with me, okay? And it doesn't carry any water with the planning board, because there is no way that you can correct anything without somebody stepping forward and saying they actually have a problem, because that's the only way, when the problem's out in the open, or the perceived problem is out in the open, can you correct something. And that's, that's basically it.
Well, Mr. McGrath, there's a saying, right? If you believe in it enough, you'll put your name on it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So,
Ms. Walker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. McGrath and Mr. Lally, for everything in explaining this to us. Since I was the one that made the comment about the yelling and the screaming, I just wanted to clarify, and I think it was misunderstood, that the yelling and the screaming came from the disgruntled developer. It did not come at all from Mr. Gordon. Mr. Gordon is at times a little humorless, but he is incredibly knowledgeable and very careful about every single thing he says. He stays on point, and I've never seen him lose his temper. He's really hard to go against, because he has all the facts and figures very close to his mind, and he never has resorted, to my knowledge, to yelling and screaming. So any of that yelling and screaming did not come from him. The other thing that has troubled me even more since the last meeting is the fact that this roundtable, the EDC roundtable, was set up and held without my knowledge. And I mentioned that before, but I'm mentioning it again because it's so troubling that a letter was sent out to the Board of Health, the EDC, the Planning Board, and all the inspectors, saying the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee invite you to this. And I didn't know about it. And now I understand that how it happened, kind of, but I really am very uncomfortable about, unless 3 members got together and voted on that without my knowledge, or even discussed it. I am very uncomfortable about meetings being set up without my even knowing about it, much less having any input for it. So, and I know that you all agreed that there was no problem with that. Well, there is a problem with it. There's a very serious problem, and if you completely left out of a meeting that was being set up and you didn't even know about it, you might be a little disgruntled about that too. That particular night that that the EDC roundtable happened to occur was also the night when we were supposed to be meeting with the Dudley Charlton Regional School Committee. And that was a mix-up. And they were very upset that we weren't there. And that's where we were supposed to be, and that was much more important. The the EDC thing could have been put off. It wasn't, there was no immediacy to it. So, I just needed to get that off
Mr.
my
Chair.
chest.
Thank you. Mr. Lally, then Mr. Singer.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to just emphasize that the interest of the community of Charlton is above and always been kept up front above our own personal agreements or disagreements, and that's where we work to, and that's the standard we maintain, and we are very careful to bring people in that we can trust and that will stick with the law that's there. Mr. Gordon strictly adheres to the law, and he can be very strong, but he wants to do what's right for the town, has always done what's right, and I think we're very fortunate to have a man of his caliber and his expertise on board.
I'm not questioning anything you said. Again, this was, no part of this was ever meant to be a referendum on the town planner. It was never meant to be. Mr. Singer?
I will just point out, Ms. Walker mentioned that it was her who, I guess, brought up the arguing, or whatever we want to describe that as. I actually had heard of it prior to Ms. Walker, because I read about it in a newspaper article. A newspaper article in which our town planner was quoted. Whether he gave the interview, I'm not sure, but it was from that article that I got a lot of my information. And regardless of someone's expertise, I'll put it out there, I thought it was unprofessional. And I'm not saying it's over, but I'm just saying, and as I said, we're all entitled to our opinions, and I said, I'll put my name on it. That's what I feel.
Mr. McGrath, I don't want to beat this too
No,
far.
no,
so if we
but,
could wrap it up.
I know Ted's uncomfortable with all this discussion going on, but I think Ms. Walker hit it head on, and I believe if you read the article, the town planner was saying that the applicant was yelling and screaming, and Mr. Gordon did not yell and scream back at him. I think I wanted to make sure that got out, that the town planner was very professional in his dealing with this, and I've also talked to to his assistant to make, just to verify, and that is correct. And it's one thing to come in and demand something, or to try and work with a town employee, but there is no reason that any town employee should ever be put in a place where somebody who's trying to do business with us is disrespecting him or her, and making this a place that's not nice to work, okay? I have my own back channels to get back to people, and don't you worry, I work those very hard to make sure that my sentiments for that were carried back to people. Not to, and I'll shut up in a minute. But does anybody here know who's on the EDC?
I know some.
I looked at the list the other day.
Okay.
Ron does.
I know, I can name a few of them off the top of my head.
If you look at that list and look at their accomplishments, okay? I would like to see anybody match a lot of the accomplishments that those people have. And I thoroughly appreciate all the help that they have given the planning board and the people of Charlton with the success that we have had with the things that we've had in our way. So with that, I'll zip it.
I was just gonna say, Mr. Chair, and I like Mr. McGrath, but I didn't say that Mr. Gordon was the one who was yelling. What I said was that I learned about it from the article in the paper, whether it was an interview or he must have given or spoken to someone. And I heard about it from his quotes and everything else, and our town planner, I just used the word airing dirty laundry, but I didn't hear it from the developer going to the paper with complaints or contacting me with complaints. From what I can tell, they were silent about it, at least to the Board of Selectmen in the papers. But I see in the paper, our town planner giving quotes, you know, calling out basically a relationship that our town planner has with a business in town and a town resident.
And I'll agree with you there, David. I don't know how he was questioned about that, or how the newspaper, you know, how the article came about. I have no clue, okay?
If you understand where I'm coming from.
And, yes, and
Mr. Safarovich, and we're gonna move on.
Just, this whole business about economic development and planning, zoning and all that stuff is really important to me as a civil engineer and urban planner. So that's why I get really excited and really, you know, and I find this stuff really important. And I think that at our next meeting, I would love to be able to include both the EDC and the planning board at the discussion, discuss some of the points that we came up with. And I just want to figure out what is the best method then to actually have a focused discussion instead of just being at the end of a meeting or during an all boards meeting, a special meeting dedicated just to these issues and really talk, discuss, and really share opinions, expertise with each other to go forward.
I would probably say, let me bring that back to the planning board, and then I'll contact the chair and let him know what the planning board's feeling is, okay? You know, it's their time.
I appreciate that, and again, as I said earlier, we did get some good information that came out of the roundtable meeting. Our goal is to go forward with it. Our hope is to be able to work with both EDC and Planning Board and address this. This was never, and I can't say this clearly enough, and then I'll zip it after this one, is the goal was to have a good professional discussion. It was never meant to call anyone to task. It was never meant to be an attack on anyone, call anyone on the carpet, or whatever phrase you want to use. We need, as you stated very eloquently earlier, John, we need to get economic development in this town. Water is moving forward, albeit slower than cold molasses, but it's moving forward. And I just, my goal as chairman is to make sure that when we do get to that point, we're ready and we have our best practices in place to bring economic development into the town, having all parties work together.
Mr. Chairman, it's as simple as this. If you want things to flow, you have to have water. Thanks so much, and I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're gonna move on to request for a toll road. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. Please find attached a letter from the Relay for Life team. Ribbon Rockets are requesting permission to hold a toll road in Charlton Center intersection of Main Street and Masonic Home Road on May 3rd from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. This request was also forwarded to Chief Purvier, who is in support of the toll booth, contingent upon the following safety precautions. All volunteers must wear bright-colored vests. Orange cones must be set out on Main Street and Masonic Home Road for a distance of not less than 50 feet on each respective way prior to reaching the toll station. A minimum of 5 traffic cones on each roadway should be put in place at a distance no greater than 10 feet apart. Signs warning voluntary toll booth ahead must be erected on both Masonic Home Road and Main Street, not less than 75 feet from the toll station. And the Ribbon Rockets have noted that they will comply with the safety precautions as recommended by Chief Purvier. Should the board approve this request, please consider adding the recommendations from the Chief Purvier to the motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Zafirovich?
I move that we approve this request for the voluntary toll road with the recommendations from Chief Purvier outlined in the memorandum.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? None appearing, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next up, we have a change of ownership on a common victualer's license. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. Attached is a request from Global Montello Group Incorporated, requesting approval of a common vicular's license to be used at the Massachusetts Turnpike East and West. As you know, the board approved the renewal of the common vicular's license for Gulf Oil Limited Partnership, which is operated under the name of Gulf Express. The sublease for Gulf Oil Limited Partnership for these locations was not renewed. The lease has been given to Global Montello Group Incorporated, who will still run the stores as Gulf Express. No Cory checks were required as the management has not changed. I would recommend the board approve the request as requested.
Any questions or comments from the board? If none, I would entertain a motion if anyone cares to make one.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Singer?
I would move that we approve the change.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? Then none appearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next up, we have our scholarship questions for 2014. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir, it's time to get the scholarships to the schools, and in doing so, the board chooses the questions each year. Last year, the board chose the following questions. The cooking question was, people today have instant access to cooking recipes and techniques through Food Network channels. You are requested to research 3 cooking shows and write a brief essay comparing the show's focus, value to the public, and helpfulness. All others were given the question, a renewed debate over the people's right to bear arms has been spurred by the tragedy in Sandy Hook School. Some people have asked for armed guards to be placed in schools. Some people have asked for more control of guns. What do you think is the government's role, if any, in addressing public safety and people's access to guns? Does the board have recommendations this year for questions? And I believe we had let you know that this was coming up at your last meeting.
Any comments from the board? Any suggestions? Mr. Singer?
I was just gonna say, one question can be, why is man versus food bad for this country? Just kidding.
Mr. Chair?
Mrs. Zafirovich?
Just one question I think I came up with for all the others, just a general town question, involves that Charlton has an open town meeting format. That's the way we run a government with a select board and a town administrator. There are other kinds of governments that are available, including a representative town meeting, where the entire public are not allowed to come, but they have representatives from different neighborhoods. And there are 2 types of city councils with weak and strong mayors. So the question I would maybe put forward is, do you think that Charlton should stay with a open town meeting format, and maybe, or would it behoove the town to switch to one of the other formats in the near future, and explain why?
That's fine with me. Do you want a cooking question?
You didn't like mine?
Any reaction here at all? Something, you took it back halfway before it was
There's a
totally
show
out
on
of your mouth.
TV, Man versus Food, where this
Man
person,
versus food?
yeah, where he eats
I
this
guess I
just
missed that.
disgusting piles, and he has to do it within so much time. It's the most unhealthy thing you've ever
Right.
seen.
Wow. I guess I'd like to see, through the chair,
Ms. Walker.
something about sugar. I know that in a century ago, in 1900, the amount of sugar the average person consumed was probably significantly less than what they consume today, and the rates of heart disease, diabetes, and cancer was also lower considerably, kind of almost in proportion. And it's kind of fascinating. We're inundated with sugar, donut shops, everything all around us. It's very hard for all of us. And it's very hard for me.
Say, what, you're bringing the Krispy Kremes tonight?
Right. So, I don't know, some kind of a question about sugar and how much it should be part of our diet. I don't know. I can make it more.
What's our deadline on these, Ms. Craver? When do we have to have these done by?
It would be helpful to have them decided by next meeting.
Okay, I'll write something up.
Okay, thank you. Those creep up on us every year.
If the deadline is sooner, I'll let you know.
Thank you. And lastly, under business, we have the joint financial meeting with Dudley Charlton School District. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. As you're aware, there was a meeting named the Joint Financial Meeting at the Dudley Charlton Regional School with the towns of Dudley and Oxford, as well as Bay Path School, and you have been briefed on why Charlton officials were not in attendance. I am asking whether the board would like me to work with the school district in Dudley to set up a meeting for the original purpose, namely to have a budget kickoff meeting with our school district. I will add also that I had an opportunity today to have a conversation with Representative Paul Frost, who suggested that this meeting was, I don't want to say premature, but early, because there's very little known about the budget and what the state numbers are. So what may perhaps I'd suggest we look at is possibly trying to have that meeting, which was for, originally for the town of Dudley and the town of Charlton to have a conversation about the needs of Dudley-Charlton school system. And we did start having legislators come and also give us a budget update. So I would recommend that you take a look at possibly March in maybe redoing that.
Any thoughts from the board?
I'm fine with that, Mr. Chair.
Excuse me, Mr. Singer?
If we can have that meeting in March, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with it too.
I agree. I
But
think
after March 18th, because that'll be good.
the end of March. I agree. I see value in sitting down, just the district, and sitting down and getting any legislators we can to give us some updates. But I do see value in that, and I would ask that you pursue that and see if we can reschedule the date towards the end of March
Okay.
and
I
meet for
would-
the original purpose.
I would think that would be wise also, because I think the school committee has their budget that they start out with, and then they go through several revisions, and it would probably be better in informing for us if they had gone through a couple of revisions already, because as you know, last year, we had the meeting early, they were still at their budget process in the beginning, and then by the time we got to town meeting, we weren't on the same page.
Exactly. So if you would work with the
Absolutely.
parties, Mrs. Zafirovich?
Do you think, I wanted like to know the feelings of the board of including Bay Path in this? They both served both Charlton and Dudley. I think it's good to have everyone on the same page, including both school districts.
We'll just be discussing two different budgets.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's really different.
Yeah, I'd almost be more interested in having two meetings. Certainly Bay Path is a big part of the town, and as we saw this morning, but I think they each might warrant their own meeting to sit down and discuss needs.
Okay.
So, Mr.
Thank you.
Chair, maybe we can pursue a meeting, as Mr. Seffer was mentioning, with Bay Path, after, if Mr. Chair can reach out and see if we can get that started too. Everybody gets to
Thank
one.
you.
They do offer to come and talk with you about
Yeah.
their budget and their numbers, so if you'd like, I can set that up for here.
That'd
I
be
remember-
terrific.
Remember they came, I think it was last year, I was on the finance committee, so we saw that they presented to, I believe, the board of selectmen, so I think
Right.
it's very good to have them.
Okay, moving on to old business, we only have a couple of items there. The first is a review of where we are with regards to the town meeting warrant and the budget. Ms. Graver?
Just wanted to let you know that we're continuing to work on that. As you can tell, that the deadlines for the warrant and the budget are not completed yet. They are coming in. We are getting different warrant articles. I did want to put this on the agenda to see if you had any that you were looking for us to add on, that I could include for next week.
Questions, thoughts, warrant articles?
Okay, I should have a list, a beginning list for you next week, at your next meeting.
Thank you. I know that, I can't say I know that FinCom is now meeting every other Wednesday following our meetings. So I know they're deep into their discussions on it as well, so. The most wonderful time of the year. And our second item under old business is the water IMA legal representation. Ms. Craver?
Yes, I'd like to put a hold on that
Sure.
this time.
Any objections from any member of the board?
No.
Nope, then we will hold on that for now. Thank you.
Excuse me for a second.
Next up on our agendas, we have committee reports, and we have Mr. Singer.
Yeah, I can't remember if we said it or not before, but just wanted to announce that fire negotiations have completed and been ratified by both sides. And we are about to start highway negotiations.
And you're right, and I would just like to say a quick word here of thanks to the fire unions, members that came to bargain. They're always very professional and very fair-minded, and it's a pleasure to work with them. Not that they're pushovers, I'm not trying to insinuate that, but they are very committed to what they're doing, but they are very professional in their dealings, and it's a pleasure to work with them. Do we have any other committee reports?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I
Ms.
just
Walker.
wanted to give an update on the, I went to a fairly long MMA meeting last week and to a local government advisory council, State House with, it was supposed to be Secretary Shore, but he just had a baby, so, well, his wife did, so they couldn't be there. But basically, some of the things that I heard that stood out was, and you may have heard these already too, but the governor said he maintained the budget, but in fact, it was already underfunded. So maintaining an underfunded budget, especially with regards to the school, is not a big deal. Senator Brewer and Speaker DeLeo were more encouraging about what's gonna happen. But the consensus was is that we really need to, if we're doing budget planning right now, we really need to go along with what the governor's plan is, even though it's not very, very encouraging. Another thing that I heard that was interesting was there's a group being brought together in New England to create guidelines for towns in general with regards to stabilization and how much should be in it. There's towns that have so much money in their stabilization rainy day accounts that there's consideration. Some legislatures have said, why should we give them any money? They've got all this money. And that's a concern that I've always had, that we don't go too high on stabilization rainy day fund, because it's possible that somebody will look at that as an opportunity to say, we can't do this debt exclusion, they already have the money. We can't do this override, they already have the money. We can't give them this much state aid, they already have enough money. So this group is gonna get together to provide guidelines for all the cities and towns all over New England, which will be, then we'll say, well, we're just adhering to the guidelines.
May I throw a question in there?
Sure.
Is that not like saying we're not gonna give you what you're entitled to because you've been fiscally responsible?
Exactly. So if we have,
Just a different take.
if we have statewide guidelines, then we can at least have something that we can stick to and explain why we have so many, if we have millions in our stabilization.
Mrs. Zaffro, do you have a question for Ms. Walker?
Yeah, is this a subset of the MMA?
No, I'm not sure where the group is coming from. I could find out more about it though, but it was mentioned in the updates that they give us. What else? Lottery revenues are projected at 20 million higher than the beginning of the year, and those funds should be coming to us, and they're not. So that's the problem with the governor's budget also. There's a consensus review estimate that we're gonna be 4.9% over where we were last year for tax collections. But the governor's budget doesn't reflect that. And where the MMA is pushing for the fact that if the taxes have increased by 4.9%, then local aid should increase by 4.9%, have them go together. So the MMA is pushing very hard for that. The Chapter 70 money, very small foundation aid for schools. MMA is asking for 130 million instead of 90 million. Regional school education is level funded. And the suggestion from MMA was talk to your legislators to encourage them to do better, especially with regards to the school and the local aid. And also, once again, every year there's this push to get us more numbers by March instead of June, to the extent that we all have to wait longer until June is too hard in all the cities and towns. What else? Talked about OPED. Medical marijuana dispensary license are in process, and there's one for every county. But the licenses are only provisional until the dispensary complies with all regulations. I'm not sure where the nearest one from here would be, probably Worcester. The last thing, I guess, that's important is there's a legislative breakfast coming up here in March. And I'll be away, but as many of you should go to it. It's here in Charlton at the library. And have a chance to push these things with the legislators. So.
Thank you.
They'll
Thank
be there.
The only other committee report that I'd like to get, and I'm not gonna give any specifics on it, is that the Rays Foundation had their annual Taste of the Town a couple of weeks ago up at Overlook, and the final numbers are still being put in, but it looks like it was a very successful, Taste of the Town, so
Like 18,000.
it was around 18,000, it's gonna be around that number, but the final is still coming in. And, unfortunately, it's, for the second year in a row, it's happened on a weekend that I have to be out of state. So I wasn't able to attend, but I just wanted to thank everyone who attended and everyone who worked on putting it together. It's a great event, and I know I preached the Rays Foundation more than other things, but it's a very important group. The work is very important. It's a 100% volunteer organization. Every penny that is raised goes right into helping seniors with heating oil and energy costs. So it's a very valuable and very necessary group in this town. So thanks to everyone who went out and supported it and everyone who worked on putting it together. Do we have any other committee reports? And we don't have any, but we do have some policies for our policy review.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Singer?
just want to point out, I believe last time we already covered policy 10 and 14.
I believe you're
was
right. 10 and 14.
Closing, delayed opening, and correspondence. And then we-
Correspondence, we have, it's on hold because Robin and I have to work that out.
And we have number 20, which is employee parking in front of municipal building.
Yeah,
And
Mr.
Mr.
Chair.
Singh, you have some recommendations on that?
Yeah, just, well, if you have it in front of you, do you want me to read just the change or the?
For the folks at home, if you would read the change, please.
And the current, or just the change?
Um,
Depends on how long it is.
Exactly.
Pretty sure they good.
If it's pretty short, then I'd ask you to read both.
Current is, parking for all employees of the town hall municipal complex will be on the west side of the street, only along the town common. All parking spaces immediately in front of the town hall are 30 minutes only and are for visitor parking. Employees with disabilities or temporary injuries may request a waiver from the town administrator's office. My suggested changes would be for it to read, parking for all employees of the town hall municipal complex will be on the west side of the street, only along the town common during their normal working hours. All parking spaces immediately in front of the town hall are 30 minutes only and are for visitor parking. These spaces immediately in front may be used by town hall employees for attendance at evening/night board and committee meetings that are not part of the normal work hours. And then it continues on about employees with disabilities and temporary injuries requesting a waiver.
Any questions for Mr. Singer?
I do.
Shoot.
Could you just explain your rationale for the changes?
think-
I'm looking at during their normal working hours, so that would prohibit someone from saying, I'm gonna take a ride with you to go to the grocery store and then just drop me back off, if two
Well, some
employees
people-
wanted to go somewhere.
Who may work for the town, may also be residents of the town, and they may be coming back here in the evening, not to do their job, but to come before the board of selectmen, perfect example. So they're not here to work, they're just here to come to a meeting, come before the board as a resident, they should be able to park and use those spots. My feelings are, they're here as a citizen, they're not here, for an 8-hour shift or a 4-hour shift, they're not here to work. They came here to come as a resident, to come before a board or a hearing or anything else, but they should be treated as any other resident who's here on personal business.
I imagine a lot of the people who do come to these kinds of meetings for those purposes already do that.
Well, it should be, I think David's got a good point and it should be stated, so.
I agree.
I would entertain a motion. You want to make a motion to adopt the changes?
I'll move to adopt the change.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there discussion? None appearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Singer?
policy 24, I had no changes, but I believe Ms. Walker had thoughts.
Was
We can-
this on
I can
the,
hold this if you want for a future meeting.
This is on exit interviews.
On exit interviews, yeah, I just wanted to add, I don't think we're doing enough exit interviews, and I just wanted to add that, they should be attended by a member or two of the board of selectmen as well as the town administrator. especially where it relates to the town administrator's office. Because there was one person that left and that person didn't have an exit interview. And, so I just think if it's, and it should be just a little bit broader, and I'd like the selectmen to be more involved in those exit interviews, just so that we can know what's going on.
Would you be willing to work with Mr. Singer and write something up for next time?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. And the last one we have is number 57, the winter parking ban.
Yeah, that's a short one too, Mr. Chair. Get to that. And then I'll give you my reasoning too, Ms. Graves. It's in here. Here we go. A winter parking ban will be in effect during and 48 hours following a snowstorm of over 3 inches for this upcoming and all ensuing winters on all streets in the town of Charlton. Clearing of sidewalks as approved in the town's general bylaws state that every owner of land abutting a sidewalk shall cause all snow and ice to be removed to a width of not less than 4 feet from the portion of the sidewalk abutting his land. Removal of snow onto public way plowing as approved in the town's general bylaws. No person shall plow or otherwise remove snow from private property onto a public way in such manner as to obstruct travel or snow removal operations on such way. My suggested change would be to remove the walkways line, as I think it's widely ignored throughout the town and not really enforced as it is, and to change that to only reflect walkways in front of public buildings and businesses that are open to the public.
Somebody dance.
We're a lively group tonight, huh?
So, but I think that, as Mr. Sephirovic pointed out, people do it anyway. And I think, I can't tell you how many neighborhoods I drive through and no one's clearing the sidewalks for the length of these roads. So, I mean, they're not doing it, we're not enforcing it, and I really think at this point it would behoove us to just remove that and make it that we want that requirement for buildings open to the public.
What I would ask if we could is that we forward this to the chief of police, get his feedback from a public safety perspective, and then take action next time when we have his feedback,
Sure.
if that's agreeable with everyone. Would you forward that to him, Ms. Craver, and
I
ask
will,
his opinion?
We'll also add that in the actual bylaw, I believe we have enforcement as of the highway superintendent, and he has requested that we change the bylaw at this town meeting to have the police chief make the be in charge of making sure that people properly clear their sidewalks. So,
Just, that begs
that-
the question, are we gonna have cruisers patrolling our neighborhoods looking to ticket people for sidewalks not being shoveled? Because that's a waste of my police officer's time and yours and his and hers and his and theirs. My opinion.
I see,
If we're short officers, we're gonna have them go looking to ticket for shoveling sidewalks.
I see the point in the highway superintendent's request.
the issue, and I understand that it's difficult to oversee, but one of the issues is trying to keep this on the books is so the people are doing their sidewalks, so children don't have to walk in the street when they're trying to get to the bus. So I'm not sure what the answer is, and I hear your concern, but that is one of the reasons that the town has the bylaw requiring people to shovel the sidewalks in front of their house.
Just in reference to that point, I'm sure that the highway superintendent and police chief can come in and address them as well, but kids are already walking on the streets of the bus stops. In fact, I know several bus stops where there is no sidewalk because the sidewalk ends long before there, so they have to go in the streets anyway. The kids are coming down the streets on warmer weather on their skateboards and other scooters, so they're not on the sidewalks to begin with. And I go back to, again, I'll use my house, for example. My house is not public property. So, you know, I don't have a business being run out of there, people coming in and out, in and out. Town hall or a convenience store that's open to the general public should make sure all walkways, just an opinion again, are accessible. But, you know, I can't buy into the argument about kids for the school bus, because I mean, I have 2 kids who are on the school bus who are forced to walk in the street because there's no sidewalk. You know, it ends before they get that far.
So I'd still appreciate hearing back from the chief and or the highway superintendent if we could before we vote on this one, if no one has any Thank you for your work on those, Mr. Singer and Ms. Walker. Next on our agenda is the Student Select Persons Report, but as I said, Ms. Sprague is on her way to Indianapolis to compete with the Shepherd Hill Show Choir Fantasy in a competition, so we wish her well and wish them well. Ms. Walker?
Are we still gonna hear from the sixth grade essay contest? I have that, I can read it if he's not coming.
We don't have that. If you have that and you'd like to read that?
I mean, do you know, if Robin, have you had any luck with
I
it?
left a message.
Well, let me try to get him to a meeting,
That'd be great.
'cause I think it'd be better if he read it, unless there's some, maybe he doesn't wanna come, I don't know.
We'd love to have him if he does. If not, we can read it for him.
All right.
Thank you. Next up, we have the Town Administrator's Report.
Yes, sir. Site visits to review capital, February 3rd and 7th. Member of the Finance Committee and Board of Selectmen attended site visits to the fire station, police station, and Fay Mountain Farm to review capital needs, including looking at the buildings, equipment, and vehicles. We had a snow cancellation on that Wednesday where we were supposed to go to the Highway Department and Library. Highway Operations Building visit is scheduled for tomorrow at 9 a.m., and the library has decided not to participate, although they may be asking for funding for a chiller. I have heard but not received any written communication that they are planning a roundtable on the chiller. At this time, I do not believe they have any other capital issues. Historic Commission, we have begun to move the Historical Commission from the attic to the office vacated by the last Veterans agent. As you know, the new agent has an office downstairs near the Council on Aging, as he's also the Assistant Director. Massachusetts Municipal Association Energy and Environmental Policy Committee. I attended the committee meeting this past month and presented a case study on Great Ponds to them, and the other discussion was about the bottle bill. Solar net metering credits, as you know, we signed a 3-month letter of intention to purchase new net metering credits from a proposed solar project in Spencer. It was nearly a year ago. I am now looking to see if there are any other projects that are closer to being completed. I have concerns that we will have a repeat with the cell tower. A company has given a contract, and since they haven't been able to get an anchor, we have not received the revenue promised. CIC grant for stormwater management. I am happy to say that the Central Mass Regional Stormwater Coalition has received a CIC grant for the 3rd year for stormwater management. We will be receiving $80,000 to complete the next tasks. As you know, Spencer is the lead community and Charlton is the second contact for the 30 towns. And that's all I have at this time.
Any questions for the Town Administrator? Do we have any other business to come before the board?
Yes,
Ms. Craver?
executive session.
Oh, I didn't think we had anything for executive.
I know we do now.
We do now, okay. Is there any other regular business to come before the board? I just have a couple of quick things. Ms. Craver, Mr. Zafirovich, and myself attended the topping off ceremony at Bay Path this morning. It's the ceremonial raising of the last beam, and now most of the work will be moving inside, so it's great to see progress going so well up there, and seems they have a great crew going, and it's coming along very well. So it was a pleasure to attend it, and we wish them well as they go forward. The other thing that I'd just like to take a minute and say is that the seemingly endless string of snowstorms that we've had recently have really taxed our public safety departments, our highway department, our police department, and our fire department. So I'd just like to take a minute and thank them all for the work. I know they've all been required to go above and beyond normal call of duty the past few weeks, and the roads aren't perfect, but boy, they're out there working on them constantly, and you know, with the weather resulting in more accidents and such, that puts a higher taxing on the police and the ambulance and all of that. So I'd just like to take a minute and thank our highway department, police department, and fire department for all the work they've been doing getting us through these snowstorms.
And they're gonna get a nice break in the next couple of days.
And no one's looking for that 50 degrees more than they are, I'm sure. So,
Would be number 2.
and we have a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Chair, I move that we go into executive session under purpose number 2 to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Collective bargaining, while a public body may negotiate with non-union personnel or conduct collective bargaining sessions with union executive sessions. I don't have the exact language in front of me.
Just go,
That's good.
is that
You
good
covered
enough?
Yeah,
We
if the
covered
chair
what we need to
decides
do there?
if a open meeting will have a detrimental effect on negotiations.
We,
And adjourn for purpose, only for the purpose of adjournment.
there we go. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. We'll go by roll call vote. Ms. Walker?
Aye.
Mrs. Zafirovich?
Aye.
Mrs. Singer?
Aye.
Chair votes aye and declares that an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the body.
I should know all of them by heart now.
Yeah,
You did
when
pretty
it- when
good.
it's